Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. And in this video, I'd like to discuss Jeremy Clarkson's latest parade of his ignorance and stupidity on the subject of immigration, where he tries to argue that his anti-immigration views aren't actually anti-immigration, but common sense. Always treat with deep suspicion anyone who tries to use the common sense argument because it means they don't have any others. But in this case, his particular brand of common sense is that if you can't control the number of people coming into the country, you can't plan for jobs, housing or services. So as someone with a mathematical background, let me go over what Clarkson has said here is not only ignorant, but stupid, which is not the same thing. But first, if you'd like to be kept informed on political commentary, please hit the subscribe button. So let's go over the ignorance first. It was never the case we didn't control immigration. Okay, you go back to 1066, so we were famously pretty bad at controlling immigration then, but in modern times, shall we say. But what I really want to pick up on here is the notion that if you can't control something, then you can't plan for it. Well, everyone who's ever studied statistics looking at this quote will have their head in their hands. Every single day, analysts are planning for things they don't control. This is because statisticians understand that seemingly random events are actually a lot more predictable than most people realise. A traffic accident, for example, that is a random event. Couldn't possibly predict it. You know, if the person who caused it had been a bit earlier or a bit later, probably wouldn't have happened, or if they hadn't been out on the road at all. Completely random, can't predict that. And yet, when you analyse traffic accidents, you find that it fits a very predictable statistical distribution, which allows emergency services to be able to plan for these events because it turns out you actually have a very predictable distribution of road traffic accidents, even though each individual one is random. Electricity, that's a big one. The electricity you are consuming when you watch television, for example, has just been produced. Now, you may not have watched the television at that point. You may have gone out. That's random. Or you may suddenly decide you want a cup of tea. You put the kettle on. That's random as well. So how do we plan for that? We have to. You can't just pile electricity onto the national grid like supermarket stocking shelves and then replenish it as drawn by customers. You have to produce as much as is going to be needed. The electricity you're consuming has just been produced. If you produce too much, then you are wasting too many resources, potentially producing more emissions, and of prime importance to energy companies, hitting profits. But if you produce too little, then you will get blackouts and people will get very upset. So analysts study trends and they work out how much is going to be needed, and on a minute by minute basis. They're so accurate, they even take account of when hundreds of thousands are going to put the kettle on because Corrie's got an advert. The national grid doesn't control the people using electricity, but it does plan for it. Or did before the bit of the national grid which managed that was nationalised this week, but there's still a group plans for it. The point is that life is full of things that aren't controlled, but are planned for. Like I say, the more you study statistics, the more you realise almost everything in life is actually predictable on a large scale. Not the small scale, of course. For example, you can't accurately predict whether a kid will go to university when they're 5 years old, although there are factors that can make it more or less likely. But you can predict how many from a town are going to go to university. And the same applies with immigration. When we were in the EU, immigration was never uncontrolled. Levels were all very predictable. We could easily plan for housing and services. It's just that the Conservatives don't like providing services. And neither party of government did enough with housing. As for jobs, that is the thickest comment. Immigration is driven by the availability of jobs and the unavailability of domestic workforces. You don't plan for jobs. The government go, oh, we need more jobs over there. If it was that simple, we wouldn't have such inequality around the country. We'd just go, oh, Barnsley needs more jobs. Let's just put some jobs there. It's not how it works. Jobs are what drives immigration. If you have fewer jobs available, you'll have less immigration. If you have more jobs available, you'll have more immigration. So when you've got more immigration, it's a sign that your economy is trying to power up. Who argues against that? It is why our economy has struggled so much since Brexit. It's not just the trade barriers. We can't produce as much. And we can't produce as much because we cannot fill vacancies because the domestic workforce just didn't exist. They kept trying to say, oh, you're taking our jobs. No, what happened when we stopped foreigners being able to do those jobs? Why aren't those vacancies being filled? Because this long queue of so-called British workers is not there. You know, and we tried to replace a European workforce, which closely matched our skills as well, with African and Asian workers who've got more divergent skills. And that's not the real stupidity in this, though. As I said, Clarkson is both ignorant and stupid. It's ignorant because he doesn't understand statistics. But it's fairly advanced statistics, neither will most people. But he is stupid because he personally plans for things he doesn't control. He's a bit of a farmer now. Well, he doesn't control the weather or the seasons or other seemingly random factors, but he still plans for them. If he didn't, he'd never have made a go of his farm. And now he's opened a pub. He might be able to control how many customers he has because he'll have limits on how many can come in. But he can't control what they'll order. But he does plan for it. He'll buy in more of the popular foods and drink and not so much of the less popular stuff. He'll do it in exactly the same way that smarter people do on a much grander scale for housing and services, for example, if the government just lets them, by analysing trends and planning accordingly. And regardless of his limited mathematical education, which, as I say, is shared by the vast majority of the population, he must know that he personally plans for things he doesn't control. So only an idiot could actually have made that statement as he made it, hence ignorance and stupidity. And yet, this is ultimately the problem that in this and so many other countries, you know, those with the greatest levels of ignorance and stupidity tend to be the loudest as well. Because the reason they're so ignorant and stupid is because they're so sure of themselves. There just aren't enough mathematicians to go round pointing out the stupidity in the statement. Imagine if we let someone like him run our national energy supplies. It'd be very good business for candle producers, wouldn't it? And finally, if you take his thoughts to their natural conclusion as well, that'd be quite creepy, wouldn't it? See, he talks about planning for housing and services based on controlling populations. Well, it's the domestic population that mostly uses housing and services, despite what the likes of Nigel Farage say. So is Clarkson arguing that people should be given a quota of child production then? Because although we always did control immigration, despite what cretins like this say, we do not control domestic population growth or shrinkage. Is he arguing we should? Is he saying, oh no, you can't get a mortgage or you can't rent a house until you've had 2 children? Have you had 2 children? No, then you can't have a house. Oh, you've had 3. Right, okay, well, you can have the house. But we're going to take one of those children, right, and we're going to put it in the sluice because you're not allowed 3. You're only allowed 2. That is creepy. That is creepy. Or is he not actually arguing that? Is it just another example of how he's actually just as thick as pig shit? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button, subscribe as well. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.